Hey there everyone, this is Samuel Johnson and welcome back to the Lyoko Retrospectives, and today we're going to be discussing episode 64 of Lyoko, Double Trouble. Now, would you believe that I actually thought this episode was paired up to last week's episode just because of the titles being just pretty much being lined up with each other? Well, aside from maybe aside from that, the episodes really don't have a lot to do with each other. In this case, this episode is the typical penultimate season episode escalation, essentially. Because in this episode, the group's kind of running on fumes. Because they're trying to balance their regular lives with school and fighting on Lyoko, they're not doing so well. Their grades are suffering. They're coming in late in classes to the point where Yumi is warned by the principal. Sorry, just ate, so still digesting. But anyway, yeah, Yumi's warned by the Yumi has had so many absences that the principal warns her that if she has one more, she'll be expelled. And even Ulrich's grades are slipping. Even Jeremy, who's still getting good grades, is starting to fall behind in terms of being the best, with Herb unfortunately taking his spot. As such, Jeremy tells the group that after the group kind of meets up one night, Jeremy tells the group that the group coalesces, goes to the factory one night, and essentially they're realizing that they might need help. With Aelita once again suggesting that they bring William on, but Yumi again vetoes that because she still doesn't trust him, because she thinks he's too reckless and impulsive, and let's be honest, I think that's kind of a dumb reason, especially since Ulrich's on your team, but whatever. The group doesn't push it, and Jeremy says they should all just go back and get some rest while he'll stay at the factory and do calculations, because he needs to still work on, because he's still trying to find a way to virtualize everyone directly into Sector 5. As such, he ends up staying up all night doing calculations and thinking of what to do, but unfortunately he ends up conking out by the time morning hits, and unfortunately that's when the bad shit happens, as a tower is activated, which winds up waking Jeremy up, and no sooner does he wake up, he ends up getting attacked by a polymorphic clone of himself. As such, Jeremy, based on dialogue we hear, Jeremy and the clone end up getting into a fight, and the fight ended with Jeremy getting thrown into the underground sewer and almost drowned, but thankfully he survived. In the meantime, the clone goes to Caddick and goes to Aelita, saying it thinks that it's found a way to virtualize everyone in Sector 5 and they need to run a test, but Aelita, not being an idiot, says we should get everyone else in on this, and as such the clone reluctantly agrees, and unfortunately no one wants to do it because they got school stuff they want to do right away. As such, the clone says, okay, fine, we'll just go through class and then we'll deal with it later, at which point the incident's out of their line of sight. It just starts seething, and I kind of find that amusing. In the meantime, Jeremy does manage to make it back to the lab, and unfortunately he can't contact the group from his phone because it got soaked, so it's unusable. So he begins trying to find the tower. In the meantime, Ulrich, Odd, Aelita, and the Jeremy clone go to the science class, and of course, since the clone is XANA, it manages to finish its test right away, while Odd, who was trying to cheat off of the Jeremy clone, he ends up getting caught by the teacher, and since the clone finished its test, it's tasked with taking him to the principal's office. However, on the way there, Odd ends up getting a call from the real Jeremy, who tells him what's going on, and unfortunately, Odd ends up dropping too many hints that the person on the other end of the line is the real Jeremy, so the clone ends up dropping the pretense and just zaps Odd before walking away. Thankfully, Jeremy's able to call Yumi, Ulrich, and Aelita, but unfortunately, Ulrich says he doesn't want to leave because he wants to actually finish the test, because, again, grade slipping. As such, once Yumi and Aelita finish their quizzes, they head out. Actually, no. Actually, Aelita goes to finish her quiz. Yumi is actually stuck in another class. She's actually developing... It's actually kind of a photo class, and she's partnered up with William. It's in the gym, and pretty much she and William are partnered up together to develop film. However, And that's when she gets the call, and unfortunately Yumi can't skip class because if she's found out she'll get expelled, but William, while not hearing all the conversation, is ready to cover for her, and to kind of make matters more interesting, before she got the call, she and William actually talked, and William says that he's been dreaming about her. At first, Yumi thinks it's just like a dumb pickup line to try and get closer to her, but it turns out the dream he has is actually of when he helped the group at last. Them fighting the XANA possessed guy who worked for that bomb factory or whatever. Or not bomb factory. Well, I know they disabled bombs, but yeah. But when they fought the XANA possessed guy, him helping him out and how he said it made him feel good. And then when Yumi gets the call from Jeremy and she says she can't ditch class, William ends up covering for her because the dark room they're in has a window which they're supposed to cover up with they're supposed to cover up so no light gets in. But since the door to the dark room has to be locked, William says that she can go out there and he'll cover for her, which Yumi even thinks you'd actually do that for me. And he says, yeah, of course I would. So she takes the opportunity, runs out, while William stays behind and develops the film. As such, Yumi meets up with Aelita and Odd, Aelita finding Odd, but unfortunately the clone got to the factory first, and while Jeremy and the clone get another tussle, it ends with the clone throwing Jeremy down the elevator shaft. Miraculously, he survived, but unfortunately, it's going to take him a while to get back up, as he's not taking the elevator, he's taking the long way. As such, when Aelita, Yumi, and Odd arrive, the clone pretends to be Jeremy and sends them directly to Lyoko. But the instant they get there, it immediately drops the facade and begins enacting its plan. As it instantly types in a code, and ends up screwing with Odd and Yumi's avatars, so to speak, so that they're glitching out. And unfortunately, a cadre of monsters are coming their way. Specifically, about 4 Cankerlites and the Schizozoa. And unfortunately, Odd and Yumi are next to useless in this regard. As all their attacks end up glitching out of phase and thus keep glitching through the monster so they can't do anything. And as such, while this is happening, the Schizozoa is just looming ever closer to Aelita, who unfortunately it outmaneuvers all of her attacks, which again I think that's kind of a problem with the episode. I'll talk about it when I'm done, if I can remember. But yeah, bottom line, it's next to useless, and the Schizozoa manages to get Aelita. Ulrich thankfully managed to finish his test and runs to the factory, and thankfully Jeremy managed to get into the room before the clone can, and the clone sees him, of course, but before it can finish him off, Ulrich managed to knock it aside and allows Jeremy back to the terminal. So in the meantime, Ulrich and the clone are just fighting while Jeremy ends up fixing Odd and Yumi, but again, by that point, Aelita is now possessed by XANA, and she's making a beeline to the away tower. And unfortunately, she got a good head start. As such, while Jeremy's able to virtualize in Odd and Yumi's vehicles, unfortunately, it's too little too late. Odd managed to take out 1 Cankerlite before he gets devirtualized, and while Yumi is able to head Aelita off before she can get to the away tower, again, it's too late. When she tries to devirtualize her, Aelita just runs right past her and gets into the tower. At which point, it's just you kind of realize, oh crap. And as such, with nothing to do, even though I think Yumi could run into the away tower after Aelita, they showed as early as season 1 that the characters can all go into the towers. Aelita enters Code XANA, and little by little, and the final sector of Lyoko begins disappearing. All while in the real world, the clone has batted Ulrich aside and is just watching Jeremy as he puts his head down on the terminal, and the clone smiles. And so Jeremy is able to thankfully devirtualize Yumi and Aelita before they fall into the digital sea, but yeah, that's it. The mountain sector is now destroyed. With the tower that was inactivated being deleted, the clone disappears as well. The group manages to survive this encounter, but yeah, they pretty much realize XANA has pretty much gotten what he wanted now. he has destroyed all 4 sectors of Lyoko, one by one, and without any of the sectors, Sector 5 is now ripe for the picking. XANA can send as many monsters as he wants in there, and the group won't be able to stop him. At least, that's how it looks. As the group is lamenting the loss and wondering what they can do, the computer terminal that Jeremy was at begins lighting up, and it turns on the codes that Jeremy input are beginning to bear fruit. And as Jeremy looks into it, he actually tells the group he thinks he has a way to virtualize them directly into Sector 5. But as such, with this revelation, the group decides that they're probably going to need more help now that now they're down to that one sector. And this time it's Yumi that suggests that they get William, which actually shocks the group and kind of me to a degree. Because she says, oh, and her only defense is, what, I just changed my mind. I'll talk about that later. But she manages to get back to the gym just before Jim breaks into the dark room. So she and William manage to keep up with that cover, and as such, once class is over, Yumi does sit down with William and tells him that his dream was not a dream, and she just explains everything to him, and based on the way that William reacts, he's ready to join the group, and that's where the episode ends. So, yeah, like I said, this is pretty much the what the hell penultimate episode for the season, and yeah, it works well. Essentially, what I like too is at the beginning of the episode shows that the group is starting to feel a little of the fatigue that's come from doing this job, because that's kind of something that that we've seen a little bit, but I kind of like it when it does have a more direct effect on the plot. In this case, the group is starting to fall behind. Odd, personally, like okay, we only see it with like 3 out of the 5, but it's still a good enough number. Aelita is a character that kind of feels like she has it all together since she was shown to always be a genius. And Odd is Odd. He could be getting straight A's or failing all the classes, and he would still be his happy-go-lucky self. But it's kind of interesting at least to see how it's affecting the group, even in subtle ways. Like Jeremy, while still getting good grades, is slipping a little. Ulrich is still failing his classes and Yumi, in this case, has been missing too many and is on the brink of possibly getting expelled if she doesn't improve. So I do like that actually has more of a direct effect on the plot and continues to actually add more pressure to them needing to get the whole Sector 5 thing all sorted out. Because if they don't do that, because again, at this point, they don't know what to do. But I think what makes it interesting in that regard is that, well, I think what makes it interesting is just how the episode continues to develop from there, as we see the group once more opening up the idea of possibly getting a new member in the case of William, and it's actually, and on top of that, as the episode continues going on, it's still you actually when you see the Jeremy clone coming in, it helps add more tension because again, it's one of the few times that we actually see XANA as an actually threatening villain because, well, he's a good actor this time. Like, the last time, because as we've seen throughout the show, XANA has been getting smarter. And so, to see him take on to turn into the Jeremy clone and just kind of fit in, like, the last time he attempted this, he wasn't that good of an actor. Like, back during the Ghost Channel episode when he virtualized Yumi, Ulrich, and Odd into his own fake reality while he took on the role of Jeremy. I kind of found that in this case he was stilted, and it was obvious that he was just a very bad imitation. He was just an imitation. Here, while there is still some stiffness because he's still a computer, he actually does a better job at acting he has a better job of acting as Jeremy, actually hitting all the points and working to convince the group. Like, he of course tries going for Aelita because he needs Aelita alone in order to get her possessed and delete the final sector. But when Aelita says we gotta talk to the group, he goes along with it and pretty much plays his role as best as he can. Stepping aside when they say we need to do our test, and he says, okay, fine, we'll do it after school. doing the test and doing a job, escorting Odd to the principal's office, and even exchanging witty banter with him. Odd says, we wouldn't be in this situation if you just let me copy every test, and the clone says we wouldn't be in this situation if you had just chosen to study. Because, yeah, it's actually getting better, and it showcases that XANA has actually begun learning. But, at the same time, it's still XANA. What makes it, and when it actually does drop the Jeremy character, it still showcases what I love about XANA as a villain. It's just the cruelty of it all. Like, because once, like, let's go back, like, for example, when the clone realizes that Jeremy's still alive and knocks Odd aside, of course, like I said, it made a beeline for the factory. When the clone and Jeremy are in the same room, the clone actually starts complimenting Jeremy, saying, it's like, oh, you're a good swimmer, good for you. You know, I'm actually glad, I'm actually flattered to take your form, you're a smart one. Which actually is probably the closest thing to a compliment XANA has made, and you know what? It fits. It makes sense. Like I said, XANA is a computer is a computer, and while he does have something akin to emotions with his cruelty, his arrogance, and the sense of Schadenfreude he feels, at the same time he's a smart cookie, and and back during the Ghost Channel episode, it was kind of fun when he pretended to be Jeremy. It kind of showcases just kind of the amount of respect that he has for Jeremy, as Jeremy is the kind of the brains of the operation behind everyone, and since XANA is something that is a program that probably operates on cold calculating logic, it would probably value intelligence over, raw physical power. Though raw physical power is something that he values, because he definitely likes relishing in that, and he wanted to get into the internet for some reason. So I kind of like that, and it just kind of continues operating more, and we still see him being a very effective villain. We see more of his darker side coming through. Like I said, when Jeremy was almost going to be killed by the clone again, and Ulrich stepped in, throughout the whole time that Jeremy's back at the terminal and trying to contact everyone, you can see Ulrich and the clone fighting. But when things go bad, when Aelita manages to get to the away tower and deletes it, like I said, the clone actually stops caring about Ulrich. He's still engaging in the fight, but it's not even paying attention Like when Ulrich rushes at it, it just zaps him and without even looking. And it's just looking at and the clone's just looking at Jeremy and smiling. Because for a character like XANA, that action makes complete sense. Because he wants to see the hope in Jeremy die. He doesn't when Aelita manages to delete the away tower, the clone doesn't do anything to stop Jeremy from saving Yumi and Aelita, because at this point, it's won. At this point, all it wants to do is just enjoy its victory. So it's just so of course it's not going to do anything. And from XANA's perspective, these kids aren't a threat anymore. He just got rid of all of Lyoko. So why would he stop them? It's again showcases why I love XANA as a villain, and again, this plot is actually smart. Because again, like when XANA possessed Jeremy in season 2, it's him taking the form of someone the group all trust, and is someone very essential. In this case, Jeremy, because Jeremy operates the computer. He's technical support. You kind of need him, and everybody trusts him. And of course, it's still fun seeing the clone in action and doing everything to try and sabotage Odd and Yumi when they go to Lyoko with Aelita. In fact, actually, that leads to a kind of funny scene, as while Odd and Yumi are glitching out, not only can they not interact with the monsters, but the monsters can interact with them, and it gets to the point where both sides just kind of stop caring. Or more specifically, Odd and Yumi stop caring. Because the Cankerlights keep shooting at Odd, but when both sides realize that nothing happens, the Cankerlights just kind of stop, and at which point, when Odd and Yumi are just standing around, the Cankerlights are just goofing off. They're just running in circles around them, walking through them. It's kind of funny, actually. At this point, they're just playing around with them. They're not threats anymore. We're just gonna goof off. There's our boss going off to delete the sector. Let's just have fun while we can. It's just kind of goofy, and I love that. So I just love it. But again, it really does kind of when Aelita does get possessed again, the drama definitely hits. You kind of feel it you kind of feel your you just kind of feel yourself kind of like the joy is taken out. When Alita manages to get the tower, you kind of feel the like it feels like the boot just dropped, and you're like, oh crap, they lost again, didn't they? And it really hits home when you see Alita go to the away tower and enter code XANA. Like, it really makes you think, oh crap, this is bad. We're doomed. Just seeing the sector be deleted, just seeing the final sector of Lyoko deleted as everything goes away, and just seeing the clone in the real world just smiling as it revels in its victory. It really hits home, but the end of the episode, as with the ending of Season 2 and Season 1, does still offer hope. Because based on what, because Jeremy's calculations now, because thanks to Jeremy's calculations, he may have a way to get them into Sector 5 without the need for the other sectors. And with the end of the episode, there's the hint that their group will grow larger now that they're willing to offer William a place on their team. Which, actually, I might as well talk about that as well. This episode kind of went back into Yumi not trusting William, and yeah, I still think that's kind of dumb. Like, again, Yumi odds are Yumi probably does not have a positive opinion of William, considering that he was constantly hitting on her and he's just kind of a dope. But again, throughout this in many of his previous appearances, we've seen William being a positive force and helping the group even when he wasn't actively a part of it. So I kind of think, and I really, based on this episode, I think the root of her distrust of him is just because he's kind of a doofus when he tries hitting on her and she says no. Which, hello, your teammate is Ulrich, who has pulled the same shit multiple times throughout the series, and at one point got so deep into it that William was the guy that woke him up. And you don't trust him because he's a dope? Are you just like one dope per? Are you like a one dope per team kind of person? Just what? On top of that, how she opens up and trusts him is just because he does her a solid. Like, okay, you can make the argument that maybe that when he told her about the latent memories, which actually kind of going off on a tangent, do you think other people in Lyoko universe also have latent memories from before they went back in time, before Jeremy did the Return to the Past thing? Like, do any of them have like nightmares of Xana's attacks and they just kind of wake up in a cold sweat? Because if William's remembering stuff from before Time Reset, then maybe other people are too. It's something worth exploring. But anyway, yeah. You can make the argument that him telling her about the dream and saying it felt good to help might have pushed her a little, but again, I feel like she should have seen him more in action beyond wanting to help. I feel like, okay, I would buy that she would be more willing to let him join the group and give him a chance. But basically, instead of saying, I think we should do it, I'll give him a chance, instead of going like that, she says, let's do it, let's get him on the team. And her only explanation is, I changed my mind. Again, it doesn't feel right. You can make the argument that's because she's a kid. It's just, I don't know. Maybe it just kind of feels all dumb, because I feel like there should be steps to her finally fully trusting him. I could buy that she'd be willing to give him a chance and let him join the team so they could have that chance. Now, and again, to be fair, if they let him join the team, they'd have to actually be really sure, because let's be honest here, the instant he went into Lyoko, even if they went back in time, he'd still remember it, and he could possibly still blab. But again, I feel like that there should still be steps to take. Like, even if she was willing to let him join the team, I feel like that considering her personality, I feel like she would still be at least a little apprehensive, even if she was more willing to offer her trust. Again, not to the point where I feel like there should have been steps. And again, another problem, which unfortunately has been radiating throughout the season, is Alita. This has nothing really to do with the episode. It's kind of something that happened overall, and I just kind of want to finally talk about it here. Despite the fact that Alita has now been upgraded to a more warrior status in the group, unfortunately, she's kind of the white mage of the group. Like, she's probably one of the most valuable members of the team, but in a fight, she's shit. I'm sorry, that's the case. And to be fair, throughout most of seasons 1 and 2, she had no offensive abilities. If she ever got into a situation where she had to fight on her own, she had to be creative and find ways out of it that didn't involve her doing physical attacks. But in season 3, now that she's been recompleted, regained her memories from when she was on Earth, and no longer is tied to Lyoko, and now has offensive abilities in the form of her orbs, I feel like they should have done some training. Remember back a few episodes ago when Jeremy said that Aelita had the most monster kills? Yeah, Jeremy is full of it and obviously biased because Aelita doesn't do a lot of fighting in the series. She sometimes destroys a monster. She can be offensive when she wants to be, but she's not a fighter. That's why I call her the White Mage. She's like the White Mage, she's probably the most valuable member of the group, and they need to keep her alive for what they need to do. If she gets devirtualized, they're screwed. If she gets devirtualized, then it's going to take a bit of effort to get her back, especially which in season 3's case, all it really means is her being booted out of Lyoko, and then her having to go back in and make the trek back to wherever the heck they were. But even then, she's still in the time it would take her, a lot of damage could be done. But again, like the White Mage, her fighting is horrible. She sometimes there are times when she actually forgets to use the energy orbs, and even if she does, sometimes she's not good with them. Case in point, the Schifozoa. I understand that she would possibly have some latent fears connected to this thing, since in season 2, the instant she was ever alone, this thing would come at her, and she would be screwed. But I feel like that again, that's what the training is for. I feel like they should be doing training with her now. Because, again, very valuable member, and as we've seen in season 3, she needs to stay alert. You're telling me that the only ones capable of fighting off the Schifozoa are Ulrich, Yumi, and Odd, but not her? The one this thing is always targeting? If anything, I think it should be top priority that she should learn how to fight. It's just to send that thing off. And why does none of them aim for the eye? As we've seen in previous episodes, none of them aim for the eye. That thing has a giant fuck me symbol on its face, and none of them ever go for it. None of them. All they do is like shoot the head or or cut the tentacles, but none of them ever aim for the eye. To be fair, when Aelita does blast at it, it bobs and weaves around. But again, training. She doesn't try any of her fancy acrobatics to get out of it. She just keeps backing away. Like, bitch, this thing is obviously one of the most dangerous monsters on Lyoko. Learn to fight against it without backing up. Seriously. I'm sorry, this is something that I've just noticed throughout the season, and this episode is finally where it's all come boiling over. I need to talk about it because it's a stupid plot point. While the beginning of the season established that Aelita is now a full-fledged Lyoko warrior, nothing really changed about her status beyond that. She still does the admin privileges, but despite the fact that she can now do attacks, she doesn't really do a lot of fighting, and I feel like that for her, that should be valuable. She spent most of her life on Lyoko, well, as much as she can remember about it, without the ability to fight. And now that she regained her memories and these new powers, I feel like she should learn more how to use them. And while you could make the argument that maybe she was doing this off-screen, but for whatever reason, that does not reflect in the show itself. Sometimes she fights back, and sometimes she can be effective, but especially for situations with the Schifozoa, I feel like they should have trained for this. That Aelita needs to learn how to do more physical stuff beyond the orbs. And again, psychological factors. Let's go back in the episode when Odd and Yumi are glitching out and they're dealing with the Cankrolites. Aelita, throughout the whole thing, is just backing away as the Schifozoa looms in on her. I feel like that in that case, she should have run around and tried to gain cover. Even if she couldn't have fought off all those monsters at once, she should have run around and kept a good distance between her and the Scyphozoa. She could have blasted at any Cankerlites that got near her, taken as much as she could, or just tried running. Now you can make the argument that maybe the Cankerlites would provide covering that would probably do cover fire. To which I respond with, maybe she should get devirtualized then. Before you say, but the Jeremy clone needs her to be on Lyoko. If she got devirtualized, she could probably make a run for it. Instead, there are other ways around this. They could probably run around. The biggest priority should be to stay away from the Scyphozoa. And even if she does get devirtualized, I feel like she should have done more than just back away. She should have probably tried providing, maybe she could have provided backup to Odd and Yumi. She could have formed more orbs and tried blasting at the Cankerlites to get them off her and get them to come to her side. Even if they couldn't do a lot, it would still be them between the Scyphozoa. It would still be them in between Ielita and the Scyphozoa. I feel like that's a problem in the season. That despite the fact that Ielita has gotten this upgrade in status, she's still ultimately just the White Mage. And while there's nothing wrong with the White Mage, like I said, most valuable party member you have, she really needs to learn how to fight. And I feel like that's problem exemplified. And this episode finally made me just say, why doesn't she fight? I know, I'm sorry I went off on a tangent there, but it's just something I had to say. But overall, though, what did I think of the episode? I still think it's really good. It is, like I said, through the Jeremy clone, we see more of XANA being a really impressive villain, being actually interesting to watch and fun with all of his villainous traits, seeing him interacting with the group, being more of a force. I like seeing him outsmart the group and the ways they are around it. There is still the funny antics with the Cankerlites. The tension did feel real as you saw the group fall into the clone's trap, and ultimately it definitely felt like something heavy had happened when the mountain sector was destroyed and the group realized, what are we going to do now? But at the same time, the episode still offers enough hope that they can still continue fighting because it looks like that Jeremy may have a way to get them into Sector 5, and William is now, with the ending, it's shown that William is probably going to be the new member, so that again shows that things are changing. Despite what happened, things are still progressing and possibly improving. So again, it's again one step forward, two steps back. One step forward for the group, but XANA still has the high ground here. The tensions are high, and it does help, and it's still entertaining to watch. Overall, despite like the stuff with Yumi and again the stuff that boiled over with Ielita, ultimately I think this is a good episode, and I'm looking forward to seeing how they end the season, especially with William now finally being brought into the circle, so to speak. So, yeah, overall, really good episode. Look forward to next week. So, yeah, that's about it. Thank you for watching. I'm Samuel Johnson, and tune in next week as we look at the final episode of Season 3 and just what's going to happen now that, let's just see what's going to happen now. So, yeah. Bye.